Hello home chefs! Today I'm going to share with you how to make a delicious sous vide porterhouse recipe. Now sous vide porterhouse steak is so tender and so delicious you don't even need a knife or anything. As you can see, you can gently tear it off and it's so tender, and I could literally eat this entire plate of sous vide steak myself. But I guarantee you can probably serve 2 people with this sous vide porterhouse recipe. So today I'm going to go behind the scenes and show you a little bit of a magazine spread thing I did for Oregon Home Magazine, where I prepared them the sous vide porterhouse steak. And I'm also going to give you the step-by-step so you can do this at home too. Let's do it. Before seasoning the steak, make sure to preheat the sous vide machine to the desired temperature. I use a temperature between 130 to 135 to get a medium rare steak that I then finish in a cast iron skillet on the stove. So all you have to do is season the porterhouse steak for sous vide cooking with the salt, pepper, and then sprinkle some rosemary on top. And then into the bag it goes. It's time to put the sous vide porterhouse steak into a vacuum sealed bag like I'm going to show you now, or you could use a Ziploc bag to sous vide steak. But you want to make sure you get something like a gallon size bag because the steak is pretty large. And if you're doing 2 different steaks at the same time, you'll need to put them each in their own bag. So with the seasonings and everything, the porterhouse steak goes right into the vacuum seal bag. And I love vacuum sealing meats because everything kind of stays in place, but this will really go quite fine if you're using Ziploc bag as well. So you can make a screenshot of this sous vide steak chart so you can save it for later, but I'm going to sous vide this one in particular at 130 degrees. This is my favorite time and temp for sous vide porterhouse steak at the moment, but I do kind of play around with different times and temps in my video recipes, but I always share the one that I really enjoy, and sometimes there's just multiple times and temperatures that a person might enjoy. The longer the meat sous vides, the more tender it becomes. So you want to sous vide steak for at least 1 hour and up to 4 hours. But the important thing to note is that if you're sous viding steak from frozen, you need to sous vide it for an additional 1 hour. So after the sous vide steak is done cooking, it's almost time to enjoy it. But first you need to shock it in an ice bath. And the reason I do that is because I want to stop the cooking process and I don't want it to heat up anymore. And sometimes I'll shock the sous vide steak and then put it right in the fridge. And when it goes in the fridge, then I can eat it later that day or the next day or even days and days later. But for this particular recipe, I was shocking it in an ice bath to stop the sous vide cooking process because then I wanted to sear it. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't already warm or hot from the sous vide cooking. I wanted to make sure it was cooled down to room temperature because then just the outside of the sous vide steak sears in the cast iron skillet and the inside is definitely not going to heat up as much as it would if I didn't shock it in the ice bath. And just to let you know, sometimes I do skip this step of shocking the steaks after sous vide in an ice bath, but I try to if I remember and if I have a minute. So after the sous vide steak is done cooking and has been shocked in an ice bath, or maybe you're going to be like me sometimes and skip that step, it's time to take the steak out of the bag and pat it dry. Now you could save sous vide steak sauce to cook with later. Save sous vide steak juice from the bag to cook for later. In this particular recipe, I'm just going to jump to searing the steak itself in a pan. Now, this final step of finishing sous vide porterhouse steak in a cast iron skillet really only takes a couple of minutes. You really just want to hit the steak with really high heat from the cast iron pan and make sure to get those edges as well. So here is what you do. To finish the sous vide porterhouse in a cast iron skillet, you need to heat the large cast iron skillet to medium high. Add olive oil and butter to the pan, and then when the butter melts, you can add the steak to the pan. I love to work with tongs because it just makes it so much easier. I don't actually know what else you'd use, maybe a fork or something, but then you add the garlic to the pan or to the steak and continue moving the garlic around the pan while the steak cooks. You don't want it to burn, and it will burn if it's on there for a couple minutes. So anyways, you use a spoon to do this, and you can put the garlic butter on top of the steaks as the steak cooks, just to remove it from direct heat. But sometimes if I'm really watching it, I'll get a spoon and keep basting the steak with the butter and the garlic. So sear the steak quickly until brown on each side, about 20 to 30 seconds. Then use tongs to sear the edges for a few seconds to get a perfect crust all over. Transfer the steak to a cutting board and let it cool for about 10 minutes before serving. And just a note here, I did add a little bit of the rosemary to the pan at the end to kind of fry with that garlic butter, and it's so good. I love fried rosemary, and it tastes so good on sous vide steaks. All right, well, this beauty is done. Both sides are beautiful, crusted brown. I'm just scraping up the extra rosemary and garlic butter that's in the pan because I want all of that flavor for myself and my husband, of course. We ate this together. But anyways, the steak is done, and I can't wait to plate it. You totally knew I was going to go back for all that rosemary garlic butter, didn't you? So while the steak rests, just a reminder that you can get over 100 of my sous vide recipes in the Home Chef Sous Vide Cookbook. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and all those wonderful places where you like to buy books. You could also get Kindle editions, which seems like a really popular thing these days. So many people are getting the Kindle version and just looking at my recipes on their devices. All right, so let's plate this bad boy. It's time to take out the fancy plates. I actually do have like a regular set of dinnerware, and then I have fancy plate dinnerware that just feels a little bit more kind of like cozy restaurant style sous vide steak vibe type of meal quality. So here's a beautiful steak. I threw a little bit of parsley or something on it. It's kind of like I love to throw fresh herbs. I cook with so many fresh herbs. I grow my own indoor herb garden, and you can check all of that out at sipbitego.com. All right, and then the very last step, the unofficial step, the step to making sous vide steaks that you will not find in any of my recipe cards, is that you need to snap some photos for Instagram and post it so you can brag about it. So anyways, look at this delicious looking sous vide porterhouse. It's really a wonderful, wonderful cut of meat. It comes out so tender. You could cook it up to 4 hours. For most of my recipes, I do about 2.5 hours, give or take. But you can leave it in there and know that it's going to be okay up to 4 hours. It's not going to get too mushy or anything like that. And it's really the best of both worlds to cook a porterhouse steak. The reason is that it's kind of like the big brother, they call it, to the T-bone steak. Because a porterhouse steak is actually made of 2 different steaks. It's kind of like New York strip on one side and then a filet mignon on the other side. So on the sides of the bones are what I'm talking about. So it's really delicious. It's great to pair with a sauce. I'll share some sauce ideas with you right now. I have a great peppercorn sauce, and I have a great cilantro ranch dressing. Those are 2 of my favorites for steaks at the moment. So anyways, all my photos for the gram are ready, and it's time to enjoy this delicious sous vide steak meal. Have you tried sous vide short ribs? I love to make sous vide beef short ribs because they are falling apart completely tender, and the taste is incredibly rich. It's unlike any other method of cooking because sous vide short ribs cook for 24 hours at a really high temperature when it comes to sous vide cooking. Don't forget to subscribe to the Sip Bite Go channel on YouTube and visit Sip Bite Go to get step-by-step recipes for all my favorite sous vide cooks. You'll learn how to make sous vide short ribs and so many other recipes. I have so many things that are super tasty coming your way. Don't forget to subscribe. Well, home chefs, I hope you're leaving here with all of the kitchen confidence you need to make this delicious sous vide porterhouse. It's such a delicious thing to experiment with when it comes to sous vide cooking. Until next time, have a wonderful and delicious day. And don't forget to check out other recipes at Sip Bite Go. Cheers!